Welcome to Previously on X-Men, the podcast that looks at X-Men comics, movies, shows, characters, and more.
Yeah.
I'm Hilary.
And I'm Eric.
Hey, Eric, we talked about you in the last episode, how you play Marvel Snap.
I do. I'm playing it right now instead of giving all my attention to this.
Oh, great.
podcast.
So half of the podcast, half is on
Well,
Snap.
Sure. Half.
25, 75.
Just kidding. I'm going to put it down now.
Oh,
There,
all
it's down.
Is Jubilee a good character in that?
She's a helpful card. I feel like she's a very deck-specific card. Like, you're not just putting her in any deck. You'll probably put her in, like, a Mr. Negative deck. And,
Oh, no. I've opened a door, haven't I?
Well, her power is, like, she's a 4-cost card. Her power is that she takes the top card on your deck and puts it into the same lane as her after you play her. So, in a negative deck, you're making her from a 4-1 into a 1-4. So, hopefully, you're playing her on a cheaper curve and maybe earlier.
Wow.
And hopefully, she's getting a helpful card from the top. So,
I keep thinking that the more you talk about this, the closer I'll get to understanding, and that is not how it's working.
I used to run a deck or two that used her a lot, but I'm so far into the game that, I need to get like 6 cards to have the full set.
Oh my gosh, because you have so many cards.
Right. I don't use her as much as I used to.
Okay, interesting.
I don't really understand how that's her power.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, is it like a teamwork thing?
They do try to make the character's power or personality affect the card's ability for the most part. So I don't, like, maybe because she makes fireworks, I don't know.
Maybe it's like come on, guys! So she, brings another card. I don't know.
Yeah, so it's not the best power to character thing there.
But she is a good card, at least.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
It just matters if you need her card or not.
Well, that's not what we're talking about today. Anyway, we are talking about, we're back to X-Men 97, and we are at the second, part 2 of Lifedeath.
Yeah, Hilary, you want to talk a little bit more about part 1?
Yeah, well, I think I probably covered it plenty in the first episode that I did that. So I don't think I really need to get too much into that.
Okay. Well, when last we left the life-death stuff, Storm and Forge were like, ooh, we're in love. But then Forge told her how he made the power nullifier.
No, why Forge?
And that is what caused her to lose her power. So she was very upset. And in that upsetness process, the adversary showed up, a character who's connected to Forge, and bit him. And that's how the life-death episode ended, I feel like I remember.
Okay. So sort of seems like they started to rush through a little bit of Stormforge romance, and then the adversary comes. You said that's a Forge character. Does that mean that's from the comics?
The adversary? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the big claim to fame would be Fall of the Mutants. And I think it showed up a few times after, but, like, it's one of those characters that burned bright and fast in that Fall of the Mutants moment, and then everything else is just kind of whatever.
That's really interesting, because I spent the entire episode thinking that this was sort of a manifestation of Storm's inner turmoil, like wondering if it was even really actually there.
Yeah, that's how it's played, and it doesn't really look all like an owl all the time in the comics.
Okay.
But it has some bird things and stuff. So, yes, it's definitely played specifically for Storm.
Okay, cool. Well, some facts about this episode. The streaming debut was April 17, 2024. This was directed by Chase Conley and written by Charlie Feldman. We've got 3 new voices for this episode because we have new characters in the non-life-death storyline. Because Professor X comes in. We've got Ross Marquand as Professor X. We have Morla Goronda as Lilandra. And Carrie Kabanoff as Deathbird,
Uh-huh.
who I named right off
Yeah.
as soon as I saw her. I was like, Deathbird! And I was very impressed with myself.
There's a few couple of interesting resumes for some of these people playing bit parts.
Oh, yeah.
Ross Marquardt, who's playing
It's just
Professor
a
X.
great name.
It sounds like a Pokemon. Marquardt!
Marquardt!
Marquardt! I mean, obviously has been in other stuff, but interestingly, he was the voice of the Red Skull in Infinity War.
Oh, the movie.
Right, he was the voice of Red Skull when he showed up in the Infinity War and Endgame stuff.
Right. Because he's like a CGI kind of a guy.
Because it was not Hugo Weaving.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. He did some stuff in and did the voice of Ultron in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So I guess he's now their voice actor.
That movie doesn't exist.
He plays Rudy in Immortal. He plays some voices in Invincible.
Oh yeah, I saw that show.
Yeah. And Beavis and Butthead. I mean, but lots of stuff, but that was interesting.
Is he Beavis or Butthead?
Yeah, he's Beavis or Butthead.
Okay,
No, he's other characters. The guy, I guess I'll talk about it when we get to the character, but Lilandra, is this Lilandra who I'm looking at, the Carrie Kabanoff?
No, that's Deathbird.
No, that's Deathbird. Not too much that I've seen.
She was a pretty fun voice. She had some snark to her.
Morla Garandana, who is Lilandra. She's a big video game voice actor. A lot of her resume is it. So you might have played a video game that she voiced.
And I did because I played Horizon and she's Minerva. The odds are not good that I would have played a video game with her in it, but I did.
So there you go. She's been in those. I played League of Legends, but I don't really remember her characters in that. She played Scream in Spider-Man 2, so your husband has heard her voice.
Man, Scream is suddenly an enormous part of my life. She's popping up everywhere for me.
It was a big deal when I got her in Marvel Snap.
I bet it was.
Her power is if the first time the opponent moves a card, Scream takes 2 power away from them and gains 2 power.
That sounds pretty brutal.
It can be rough, yeah. All right.
Lifedeath.
Yeah. I mean, it opens with the Shi'ar stuff.
Yeah, I have the first line of my notes just says Shi'ar stuff.
Yeah, it's the Shi'ar are fighting the Kree.
They seem to be kind of like destroying the Kree.
Yeah, they are winning. I mean, Deathbird and Gladiator team up against Ronin. Mm-hmm. And they just kind of shut them down.
And Deathbird is like asking Ronin, like, where did the Supreme Consciousness go off to? So it sounds like they're trying to really like take over.
Yeah.
Spread their empire into the Kree Empire, I guess.
Yeah.
And then while they're fighting, Lilandra interrupts because she has very important news. And that important news is she is going to marry Professor Charles Xavier.
It's funny because she announces it to all the Kree, Professor Charles Xavier. And I'm like, do they know?
Is that a title that means anything to these people?
Do they have something comparable to Professor in their word?
I feel like no. I mean, the more that they talk about, like, I don't know that much about Shi'ar culture coming into it, except that they're weird bird people and it's an empire. But like everything that they say in this episode sounds like they kind of suck.
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely played as Rome in this.
Yeah, but like Rome was like about intellect and stuff. It sounds like these guys, they don't like art because it's a symbol of madness. Like there's all this stuff that just seems kind of robot-y weird. Mm-hmm. But anyway, she's going to marry him. And immediately the response from the crowd isn't the best.
No, they're not for it. I don't know, maybe she should have finished her conquering of the Kree and then announced it with their, like, also, good news.
Yeah, like, is there a rush on this? I guess so. She seems to think that, like, good news is good while we're having trouble. I don't know, whatever. But they all seem to not like him because he's different from them. And also, we'll sort of find out in a little bit that he's kind of a low-class choice for her.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big thing that, like, Xavier's like, oh, are you marrying me? And they kind of have like flirty dialogue that doesn't really do anything for me. Like, I don't really leave this episode being like these star-crossed lovers.
Yeah, none of their stuff seems good. A lot of it is just like Xavier being like, it could be fun for us all to live on Earth and you could be the Empress from Earth, and her being like, you should forget that your family ever existed.
Yeah.
But like, they're flirting?
Yeah, his big thing is that he's trying to get her to just work remote, basically.
Yeah.
From Earth. And I mean, rightfully, she's like, no, that's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally the queen. What are you talking about?
We seem to know right off the bat that this is a bad match.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like, I don't know if we're supposed to wish that they could be together. It just seems like immediately it's like, why are they even trying? This is stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Spending a whole lot of time with just the Shi'ar, and not like the X-Men helping the Shi'ar or something, but just like the day in the life of Shi'ar and their politics. I really have no interest in.
Yeah, did not need it.
They do not make it interesting. They don't prove me wrong with this episode. I don't leave with like an appreciation to be like, well, that's something I never really thought of.
It a little bit feels like a complete waste of time. But that's fine. Some people probably enjoy Shi'ar politics.
Maybe. I mean, I liked seeing Gladiator do his stuff.
Gladiator did have a good showing.
Yeah, but again, he's just Superman, so, Yeah. Anyway, we cut back, and now Storm is dealing with the adversary stuff. She's taking care of Forge because the adversary's like in the back being like, oh, are you sure you want to help?
Which, this was another thing that felt so much like it was just in her head, because while she is nursing Forge, like trying to take care of the scratch thing with the poison.
The bite.
She's hearing this adversary talk about how like she needs to just forget about this guy.
In her own voice.
Yeah, in her own voice, which, by the way, is great. Like, I love her performance as the adversary.
Yeah, Alison Seeley-Smith just kind of continues to own that role in a way that the returning voices don't necessarily. Again, she sounds exactly the same. And, I mean, she gets to do more acting, I think, with this Storm than she did in the other series, because Storm was always played as very overdramatic and had all those, like, wind and things. She didn't really get a lot of quiet acting moments that she gets in this Lifedeath Part 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And you're right, she gets to play that, like, you are stupid.
I keep trying to, like, do what she says, and I can't think. She's just being, undermining her self-confidence and leaning into all of her insecurities and stuff.
Forge is basically being like, don't take care of me, but stay here so I don't have to die alone. And Storm is like, that's dumb. What can help? And she calls him my love. So I guess she's given him for the power disruptor.
Yeah, there's like a very brief moment in there where, like, I guess maybe the adversary is like, yeah, he made that thing, don't you hate him? And she's sort of like, no, I guess I don't, and then that's it for that. But I guess that's kind of resolved. But Forge says, well, first of all, Forge tries to banish the adversary using a magical book, because apparently he is magical. This is something brand new to me.
Oh, yeah, he's always, that's kind of his thing. Like, he has his own magic powers, but he's also a mutant.
I feel like I have not even once seen Forge be magical.
I mean, it's not something that's played very often because his power is so interesting, but it's part of his backstory is that he was in Nam and he summoned a bunch of demons to fight the enemy, and that got his friends killed, or
oh my gosh,
maybe it was that his friends got killed and he summoned the demons. But basically, he has his own brand of magic.
Oh, I had no idea. It was cool, I thought, because the magic he used is kind of like that intricate circle-y thing. It was very reminiscent of what they've been doing with Doctor Strange in the movies right now. And I wonder if that's on purpose.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Forge's mom apparently knew about this cactus that only grows in caves, which already is, we're just very excited for Storm to deal with this cave cactus. And that's something that could heal him.
Only grows in darkness.
Yeah.
How they found it, I'll never know.
Just digging.
Like originally.
I guess. Just digging along and found a cactus.
Hey.
So back to Shi'ar.
Back to the Shi'ar. So this episode treats this two-parterness differently than the last two-parter because that was half Jubilee Sunspot Mojo, half Life Death Part 1. And this is going back and forth between the two.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you weren't watching this as it was happening, right? You weren't watching them as they were being released?
No, I don't think so.
Anyway, this was the first episode I watched on schedule, and so I don't know how other people felt, but I was a little perturbed.
I mean, coming right out of the previous episode, yeah.
Right. I was a little perturbed that we're only getting like, oh, by the way, this happened. And I was like, no, get back to that. But, you know, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
But to keep us waiting so we could deal with Life Death Part 2 and the Shi'ar stuff is very blah. It felt very much like the reveal of Cartman's father will not be aired tonight. Instead, here is the special Terrence and Phillip episode of South Park.
Those references mean nothing to me.
Sorry. They did a two-parter in the first or second season of South Park that was going to reveal who Cartman's father was. And in between episode 1 and 2, they instead did a Terrence and Phillip special. So they did not air the second episode. And it was, you know.
Like as a joke?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was, you know, they were just trolling fans and stuff. But
that's pretty funny.
It feels like that, but without the irony.
I guess it only makes sense in integrating Xavier's timeline into like what's happening, I guess. Because like you sort of end up connecting back to what had happened.
Supposed to see. I guess we're supposed to be like, yes, Storm and Forge are just like Lilandra and Professor X, star-crossed lovers that, you know,
sure. Maybe there you go.
Anyway.
What if they had put this episode before the previous episode? So that you had some space.
I don't know.
You know? Like introduce Genosha. Have this episode of people elsewhere so you can sort of be like, and time is passing. Great. And then have the big attack on Genosha. Just spitballing. Anyway. Huh?
No, I was just agreeing.
So Deathbird shows up at the court or whatever, and she doesn't want Lilandra to marry Xavier because he's from the other side of the stars, the wrong side of the stars, I think she says, or whatever, and just talks a lot about how he's this low caste creature and all this. And she decides that he needs to do this challenge, which I guess can vary in how it manifests. And for her, she's decided that he needs, and if he wants to marry Lilandra, he has to renounce Earth and he has to let Lilandra wipe out all of his memories of Earth.
Yeah. All of Earth, of his X-Men. And it's not like, will you just stop talking about it? It is, these memories will be gone. And then, I mean, but to what end? Because he'll definitely say, where am I from? Why am I different from everybody? Like, yeah,
this is a weird idea. And the fact that they just go straight for it, like Deathbird's just like, I think he should do this. And everyone's like, well, she said it, so I guess we have to do it. And I mean, he would just be a different person entirely. It's an insane thing to do.
Yeah, it's a big jump that won't really, I mean, I don't know. And because it goes nowhere, it's such a waste of time, too.
Yeah.
I guess that's the big thing. Maybe less so with Storm, but we'll get into that. But this Xavier thing is really just wasting time until the next episode. And I am against people treating quieter episodes as just filler episodes and being like, get rid of this. I think there's importance to the quieter episodes or coming down after something like episode 5. But the problem with the Xavier stuff is that not only does it not go anywhere, but the big turn he does at the end where he's like, I'll show them, also doesn't go anywhere. And so this whole Xavier thing could have just had him sitting in a chair and then having his realization that he does at the end of this episode, and he would have had just as much necessary character development as the whole episode did.
Yeah,
So,
you're right.
like, this feels very much like, oh, well, we gotta fill an episode.
Yeah, which like is insane because they have so much plot to put in. They don't need to be stretching stuff.
Right. And the fact that it is put together in almost a half episode thing doesn't really speak to strength. And it's also, again, I hope you like the Shi'ar, because if you don't, all this stuff, because it's about their politics, you know, if you're into Deathbird's want of the throne and Gladiator's tireless loyalty to the throne, and, you know, are the Shi'ar good people? Like, hey, guess what? They lay eggs. Cool.
Oh, do they actually lay eggs?
Yeah,
no, they do, right? Because there was.
The guy says you hatched.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cut to Storm and Forge are in an old mining area that the government had used, and Forge can't go anymore, but he says he wanted to do this part because he knows how Storm feels about tight places, and there is a very small underground tunnel that she's going to have to crawl through with a flashlight.
Right. So he can't do that for her.
Mm-hmm.
He can do all the stuff leading up to it that doesn't involve being in a tight space.
Right.
Because he doesn't want her to go in a tight space?
Anyway, she has to go into a tight space, and guess what? She's claustrophobic.
Oh, no. Did you know that? Did you know that Storm is claustrophobic?
I remember they mentioned it once in the old cartoon.
It's they very lightly will touch on that.
And so then it cuts back to the Shi'ar stuff, and they're all fighting because Xavier agrees to forget everything. He's like, fine, I love you. And you know what's annoying?
Insane.
It is insane, and it's also annoying how into the idea Lilandra is.
Yes.
He's like, just
and like,
do it.
This will be completely fine.
Yeah. Aren't I worth all your students and life's work and all this stuff? It's very like, geez, Lilandra, a little codependent.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's, you know, it's good to have your own hobbies and things, Lilandra, you know?
Come on, Lilandra.
So Gladiator has to fight Deathbird because Deathbird attacks Lilandra, and then Deathbird's soldiers start attacking Lilandra's soldiers, and everybody's rabbling. And then Professor Xavier remembers he's a professor, and his greatest gift is that he's a teacher.
Listen, I hated this.
See, I liked it when it started, and it like puts them all in a classroom in his psychic classroom, and he's like, class is now in session. I'm like, oh, cool. It's gonna be like a cool Xavier moment.
Yeah, see, I like the idea, like, I like the idea of him bringing them into the astral plane, and like using his power, but making it so like professor based feels very trite and condescending.
The problem for me is that it's like when you're reading a book or watching a movie and they're like, this song changed the world, and then you hear the song or you read the lyrics in the book and you're like, what? this is what changed you know, and that's how I feel like this. He's like, I need to teach these heads of state, and he's just like, it's not nice to take out smaller cities and civilizations. That's bad. And it's just like, that's your big reveal. Hey, colonizing is bad. Like, yeah, but you had to do this big psychic classroom, and like, I'm sure they've already gone through those. I'm sure you're not telling them they haven't anything they haven't already heard.
Yeah, they're a colonizing empire. Like, they know what they're doing.
It just felt very like, couldn't you like force psychic empathy onto that, or like make them feel what they have done to other civilizations, and then they're like,
But
oh,
also, why
look,
is he even talking about that? Like, they're fighting over whether or not she's allowed to marry him. Shouldn't he be like talking
it has
about, I'm
nothing
good, and having someone who's different from you is good for your community and like that kind of stuff? But he doesn't. He just goes straight for like, so, what's going on with the people that you're conquering? Like, what are you talking about?
I guess the only thing is that somebody was like, he's even a lower class life form on his planet. But like, that's not the big deal.
Right.
I don't know. It's just very whatever, I guess. It's like, yeah, he can teach and he can tell people colonizing is bad, but like, was this supposed to be a super cool moment? Put him back in a samurai outfit with a psychic sword and have him
right?
eat up Deathbird. I don't know. I mean, like I said, when it opens up and he's like, class is now in session, let's do this. I'm like, okay, cool, Professor Xavier, but he's teaching. He's still he's a BA teacher. No, he's pretty middling. Also, here's a problem I have with the Shi'ar. The voice of Gladiator sounds way too young.
Oh, I didn't notice.
I just feel like he sounds very like, I'll protect you, Princess Lilandra, don't worry! It's me, Gladiator!
I am certain that is not what he said.
I'm here to defend the Empire!
I would have noticed that, Eric.
Yippee! Now this is Imperial Guard!
Now I want a fan dub of that, just with that voice.
It's David Arrigo Jr.
Junior, he's young. There you go.
He's the voice of Banshee, for that 5 seconds we saw Banshee before. But he's playing Hampton and Plucky Duck in the Tiny Toons Luniversity stuff that's going on right now.
Oh, that's fun.
And there was something else. Oh, he played the Flash Barry Allen in the Justice League and Ruby movie.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, so he was Barry Allen in that.
Oh, neat. Yeah, those don't seem like they would be the same person as the voice of Gladiator.
Yeah. I'm as strong as I believe I am!
Who did he punch in the face super fast? Was it Ronan or was it Deathbird?
He just knocked Deathbird. And it's one of those things whenever I play like Injustice and Superman is fighting Green Arrow, it's just like, well, she's dead.
She's just not even a person anymore.
Oh, we're back to Storm now, though.
Yeah, she's army crawling through a tunnel, which is way smaller than it looked from a distance.
Yeah, and the adversary is making everything seem like it's shrinking. And Storm starts to talk to the adversary and building herself up. And I don't really get what she starts saying the weapon that Forge built, that the Executioner's weapon wasn't the only thing that took away her powers, and I guess we learned that it was her self-doubt.
Yeah, which I think that's what they were playing with kind of the whole time with the adversary, because she's trying to get her not to trust anybody. She's talking about how she doesn't even fit in with the X-Men, and like she was really trying to get away, and like
Storms does say like, I was so tired and the adversary, but then Storm just was like, well, you know what? You're dumb, and I don't have self-doubt anymore. And one thing I really like the Storm music. We heard it before when she brought the forecast against the Sentinels and walked on ice and all that, and it's cool.
That was so awesome.
I think what I like about the music is it reminds me of Final Fantasy music.
Oh yeah,
like something Noboru Uematsu would write. But then she basically starts creating lightning in the tunnel and wind in the tunnel, and she is fine. She has her powers back, and she
has her powers back.
It
feels very like fast, and they don't super like let her go through the process really, but it does when it happens. It is very cool.
Yes, it's kind of what we've talked about before, where like the moments are really cool, but when you think about them in like the bigger narrative, you're just like, well, why'd we do this at all? Because Storm's stuck in a tunnel, breaking out of the tunnel from underground with lightning and wind, and then basically creating a hurricane that you can see from space.
She's like flying into space. Is that a thing she can do?
She flies through the clouds in space. Her whole outfit transforms into
like
the
Sailor
Dave
Moon.
Cockrum. Yeah, she's Sailor Moon's. She's no longer in the Jim Lee white Storm costume. She's now in the Dave Cockrum, like, bathing suit costume.
Oh, yeah. It was so familiar. I didn't even realize that it was a shift.
Is she the first character in this show to drop the, no, because Jubilee wore the, like, vampire era costume at one point.
Because that's a thing.
So, yeah, Storm's one of the few characters now to not be wearing a Jim Lee design costume.
Which I guess thematically, knowing what we're building towards, that kind of is an interesting, like, stepping those characters through that process.
It's interesting to go to that costume of all of them because, like, that's her very first costume. So maybe they're trying to say she's back to square one as Storm, or maybe they just wanted to see this costume in action.
I'm going to guess it was that one.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit more revealing than the white costume. And she gets to do the, like, Superman flying around the world thing, and, you know, there's horses running, and she's flying around the ocean, and the adversary's been defeated, and she's Storm now.
Yeah. It's nice because I think we get to see from Storm in this series, like this season, we get to see a lot of Storm's being tired and feeling that kind of bitterness toward humanity and like those kinds of things. And those are interesting to see sort of like for the first time because they didn't really get into it in the original series. But now it's also really nice to get to see her find that joy again that we also don't see that much in this iteration of Storm, but that she has this sense of like connection to the earth and to the weather.
Yeah. The first one would play with that idea, but it was a little less than we see here.
Yeah, it's nice to have that character moment for her of just like, you know, like things are hard, but I can fly around and make wind happen. That's awesome. It's great.
Hilary, pick a different weather that you
make wind happen. I said it.
Yeah, I mean, Storm gets a lot of great stuff in this series. The problem I have is why...
That's it. Just why?
Calling it life death, you know, sure. I don't love the life death stories in general, and I'm not a big fan of superheroes being depowered for drama. But in the comics, when Storm lost her powers, she went like the better part of the 80s without her powers, and still stayed on the X-Men and led the X-Men. And all of this. And the story wasn't she loses her power. The story was this is Storm without her powers going forward. And it just, Claremont wrote the story so he could tell more stories off of that. And this show just wanted to tell that story. So we never really see her have to deal with not having her powers, because the only time we've seen her without her powers, she's just been having a lovey-dovey, nice ranch time. So her life has been fine.
Yeah. I would have liked, I mean, you see her on the bus, and then you see her in the bar before Forge finds her, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, I would have liked to see a little more of, like, her living and seeing what life is as a human, coping with it, you know, like we don't really get any of that.
And the fact that she just didn't have her powers because she didn't, I mean, it was basically the Spider-Man 2 thing where, you know, she had self-doubt, so she had no powers. It's like,
it's all in her head.
I don't know if that works.
Well, that's also an interesting thing if they go into it more. Like, it's an interesting idea that, like, maybe the device took her powers away for longer than you'd think, but it would naturally come back over time. But she got sort of stuck in that hopelessness.
I don't even remember if we're going to see her next episode. It takes a hot minute before things start to feel like they're moving forward again. Back to Space Bird Rome. Xavier, it seems like he's getting through to them by basically saying, don't cut them off at their knees because they might be worth saving. And the Shi'ar council guy is like, well, okay, let's say yes, maybe, or whatnot. And at that point, he gets a vision, a psychic flash of everything that just happened in Genosha, and he sees all these people dying, and he he quotes the Grant Morrison scene. He paraphrases the quote, they were making love, they were drinking wine, they were laughing, dancing, all this stuff. Like, they were just living life, and they all just died like that. And then he realizes he needs to go back to Earth, and he tells Alandra, because she's like, are you really leaving? And he says, if helping them means I have to leave you, well, then so be it. Then what's the point of all of this? Because he's just like, yeah, I got to go help the X-Men.
Yeah, which is interesting because, like, whenever there was hesitation on his part to allow them to wipe his entire memory, it was about the X-Men. It's like when they said, do you renounce Earth? Sure, I renounce Earth. Do you renounce your X-Men? And he's like, ugh. So, it's a catalyst for him. It's the thing he really cares about.
He said, it's hard for a teacher to stop teaching when you think there's still lessons to teach. But that's not even why he's going back. He's just going back because everybody just got killed. Right. So this whole Xavier drama is just going off in so many different directions that never makes sense for the end game. And again, him just saying like, well, then so be it. It's just like, well, then nothing was gained or learned between him and Lilandra. The Shi'ar are the same. It was all just a waste of time. And we really didn't learn anything new about Xavier. We know that he cares about the X-Men, and when they're in trouble, he's going to go help them. And it's not, like I said, if he had gotten the psychic vision at the beginning of this episode, he would have left. And since there's no hesitation either, yeah.
Anywho. I mean, the exact same thing could have been accomplished by staying on Earth and then having a Shi'ar ship dramatically drop him off. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
That would have done
it. I know we're supposed to show and not tell, but maybe just have him show up and in 2 seconds say, Lilandra didn't want me to help you, but here I am.
The end. Yeah. That's all we needed.
And then we think the episode's over, but we cut to Bolivar Trask running in a old amusement park or something, being like, I gave you my DNA so you could unleash Master Mold. Which, again, is part of the reason why I thought the reveal of the mastermind villain that we're going to see in an episode or two, I thought it was going to be Cassandra Nova, because...
Oh, that would have been cool.
The whole Genosha thing was what she did in the comics. And, I thought maybe when we saw the Xavier stuff in space, we were going to reveal that Cassandra Nova had taken him over, like in the comics. And was trying to take over Shi'ar that way. And in the comics, Cassandra Nova it wasn't even Bolivar Trask. It was, this 3rd generation Trask who she really only needed him for his DNA, and then she killed him. And I don't know, that might have worked. Anyway, Sinister's there, and we find out that Sinister was involved with the Genosha attack.
Yeah, so we just get kind of like a mysterious, it was Sinister, and then, to be continued, I guess.
To be continued.
So, not maybe my favorite episode.
No, and I get why you can't do the Storm thing in one part, because then it really feels too fast.
Yeah, like no time has passed.
Yeah.
Although there are ways to show time passing.
Yeah.
Within an episode.
But, I mean, that's the thing, too. Like, everything just happens so fast. And, I mean, we've only got 4 episodes left, and 3 of them are a 3-parter.
Yeah.
So, it just kind of feels like... I mean, I know they had to put Xavier back in play, but...
Did they?
This whole thing could have been done in 5 minutes at the end of the episode. It could have been him... It could have just opened to Lilandra saying, I'm going to get married. Here's the guy. And he's like, I still feel weird about commitment. She's like, oh, but you'll be happy here. Boom. Psychic flash. No, I do need to go back. So, Xavier, if you leave after that announcement, you can't ever come back. That's so be it.
Yeah, that would have been perfect. I love it. It's hard to see them waste time when the main problem with the entire season is that they're cramming stuff in and don't have enough time to explore stuff.
That's out of all the things to spend so much time on.
Yeah.
Of all the stories to rush with Lifedeath. I mean, I guess that's the same thing, right? Limbo, Magneto's trial, the stories we're going to see going forward as well. You know, Life Death gets the same treatment. It just feels longer because it's been split into 2 episodes, but really
Yeah.
it's the same thing. You take half a decade's worth of storytelling or more and cram it into 20 minutes because you want to get everything done in 10 episodes.
Yeah, because you want to cram as much as possible in there, I guess. I mean, they just had to have just had that as a real priority.
Well, we'll have more fun when we get to next episode.
Yeah, the next one's Bright Eyes, and I have no idea what that is.
Yes, you do.
I do? What is it?
Oh, well, I can't tell you now.
Why not?
Well, maybe I can. Right, because we found out about it in Remember It. Bright Eyes is what they call a cable.
Cable? Bright Eyes? What?
Yeah, Bright Eyes is also what they called Charlton Heston in Planet of the Apes.
He does have bright eyes.
They called him Bright Eyes. And that's what they called Caesar's mother in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. They called her Bright Eyes.
Well, isn't that just darling?
Yeah.
He also has that, doesn't he have like a star tattoo kind of thing around his eye?
Yeah, he's got bright eyes.
There you go. It's bright. It's shiny.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll talk about that one next time.
Woo.
Thank you to Prophetic Music for our theme song. Previously on X-Men is brought to you by the Radio Meanwhile Network. Other shows on the network include This Endorian Life, 90s Music Got Me Like, and 9021 Here We Go. Please rate, subscribe, or share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Bye.
Bye.
Da 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 da.